Coming up, let's talk New York Giants on the road, going across to meet the Seattle Seahawks on the West Coast. What are the anticipations for injuries? Where do we think the key matchups lie? Do we have any belief in the Giants' ability to win a football game? We dive in next. Yes, my friends. It's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where we are your hosts over here, Adam Armbrecht, over there, Andrew Makowitz. We're healthy, we're wealthy, we're wise. Let's talk about the key matchups for this game with the Seattle Seahawks and New York Football Giants and whether or not we think there's a path to victory for Big Blue. This upcoming look ahead at the matchup is brought to you by Potential, Pietential.com. Potential is a free online assessment tool, checks in on your well-being, sets a baseline for you, gives you tools to improve, and tracks your progress over time. Check out Potential today. Okay, Andy, we talk about what are the key matchups that concern us coming into this game. Boy, I hate to go broad stroke, but I'm going to say the entire Seattle Seahawks wide receiving core is a concern for me from a matchup standpoint. Geno Smith, as we know, this is the what could have been for the New York Giants years ago. We could be sitting here right now talking about veteran Geno Smith continuing to lead the New York Football Giants in the post Eli Manning era. Instead, we look over there, we understand exactly what they have. Through 4 games right now, you have 3 players in that wide receiver group 18, 25, and 24 receptions, respectively. Smith-Njigba actually leads the receiving core in receptions. DK Metcalf leads, of course, in targets, of course, in yardage, and of course, average yards per catch, and also the 2 touchdowns. I mean, it's just hard for me. And every single week, it's a difficult matchup. We've talked about it at length. Deontay Banks is just struggling no matter what the matchup is. I got to be honest with you, man. If I'm DK Metcalf and I see how Banks has been struggling, and I also just know how big and physical I am as a wide receiver, I am alarmingly concerned if I'm the Giants on these matchups. And if I'm DK Metcalf, I'm just licking my lips here. He's had some frustrating performances. He missed a couple of catches here and there. Like, this feels like, number one wide receiver energy, make a bit of a statement when it comes to the type of numbers he potentially could put up here, depending on how Shane Bowen and the Giants choose to approach this.
Well, it's again, it's a multifaceted situation when you're talking about the wide receiver room. One, the Giants have struggled this year against number one wide receivers, like bona fide number one wide
Yeah.
receivers. You look week 1, Justin Jefferson catches touchdown passes. You look at Amari Cooper, week 3, he ends up catching touchdown passes. You look last week, CeeDee Lamb, explosive plays. When there is a number one type wide receiver out there, the Giants have struggled. And guess what? DK Metcalf is awesome. And the complement in the wide receiver room, as you mentioned, they are very well balanced in terms of Jackson Smith-Njigba, Tyler Lockett. They feel like they have 3 weapons that they can attack our secondary with. We already mentioned before, there are questions about health in the Giants secondary, in a secondary that has struggled when healthy. And so right there, you're absolutely right in terms of being worried about that matchup.
Now, the other part that I'll mention here is inside of those numbers, just to be clear, 6 explosive or quote unquote big plays for DK Metcalf, 20+ yard receptions. So, and why is it worth noting? Because yards after the catch, you're talking about a guy that is bringing in a significant 136 yards, 102 for Smith-Njigba. But by the way, there's no other in terms of big plays. Nobody else has more than 1. Inside of there, it's Smith-Njigba with 1, Tyler Lockett with 1, and then you get into Charbonnet out of the backfield with 1 as well. And he also comes in with 15 receptions on 17 targets for 115 yards. So they are spreading that around. You do have also Noah Fant, the tight end, giving you 111 yards on just 11 receptions. But if I talk about this being a key matchup in the way, okay, listen, can we somehow prevent DK Metcalf from being explosive, right? And then, listen, it's averaging 1.5 explosive plays per game over 20 yards like that. Now, I can see us looking back after 5 games and saying, oh, DK Metcalf has 9 explosive big plays after playing the New York Football Giants. But if you take that away, like Tyler Lockett is a veteran, I think the struggle with him is that he knows how to run routes. Like, there's no reason from a physical standpoint, from a speed standpoint, that Tyler Lockett should be able to still be successful. But he is so good at creating space for himself, so good at understanding the system so good at finding those spot pockets of space that I look at him and say, okay, if we want to sit here, man, I'll die by 1,000 paper cuts. If I'm going to lose on Sunday to the Seattle Seahawks and you have to do it by matriculating down the field on me, so be it. Because we haven't gotten into the Kenneth Walker and the running side of this thing, which is a big problem. Probably what I think Andy was going to point to as the key matchup for himself. But, I'll die by that in the passing attack if that's the way it needs to be. I just can't live with the world where you come into this game as Shane Bowen, you come in as the Giants, and you say, Deonte Banks, you got to try to lock up DK Metcalf. If they choose to do that, I'm going to be judgmental about the results from Banks, but I'm also going to look at the defensive coordinator and the Giants and say, why would you go into this game thinking that was going to be a plus for you, an area that you can win? But Andy, I know, respond to that, but also the Kenneth Walker piece, your eyes light up in a very negative way when we bring up that aspect.
Well, no, it's funny that you mentioned Kenneth Walker because while him and Zach Charbonnet are great on the ground, it makes me actually flip it over to the Giants side. We
Okay.
mentioned and so on the Giants offense, if you are looking for a silver lining, I can't believe I'm saying the offensive line has looked pretty good.
Yes.
Protecting Daniel Jones. Obviously there weren't as many run holes, or Devin Singletary wasn't patient enough to wait for some of the holes that were created and just started bouncing things outside. Adam, knowing that Leonard Williams, Mafe, Nwosu, that a whole host of players are either dinged up, questionable, playing limited snaps, or maybe not playing in the game at all, the Giants' offensive line, if you're looking for a way for the Giants to win this game, has to be dominant. They have to be able to control the line of scrimmage, and regardless of what running back is standing behind Daniel Jones, they have to be able to win at the line of scrimmage. They have to mitigate time of possession. We see how explosive the Seattle Seahawks offense can be. This is going to be a game of takeaway for the Giants. And it looks squarely on the offensive line to say, can you, man-to-man across a line, impose your will against one of these other guys, like a Leonard Williams, which is no tall order? To me, Adam, this is going to be a massive test for this Giants offensive line that we think is better, but especially down weapons, it's really going to fall on their shoulders to be able to handle business and keep the momentum going.
Yeah, like game script wise, need to find a way to string together some possessions. There's going to be, fans hate to hear this stuff, but it's like, hey, just give me a 7-play drive that picks up a first down or two and helps the field position not be where you're punting from inside your own 20 and you're giving a short field to Geno Smith in that offense. Like, there's just going to be chunks of this game where maybe you have to be able to pull that off in order to have some success. It's really hard to look back at that Seattle team and think that you're not going to need to score over, 20 points, obviously, to be in this game. And the Giants have only done that once so far this season. So, there's very simple, high-level things to say. I don't know if the Giants are capable of doing that. The other part that I think is interesting here, too, is you talk about Geno Smith. He was leading the league, I believe, in passing yards to this point. He's completing over 72% of his passes as well. But 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. And I haven't gone and looked at every single one of his picks. I know for sure, I believe, in watching one of the Seattle games, that one of them came off a tip ball, deflected, goes up in the air. But the other side of it is, are you going to be able to get home against him as well? Like, if you need to be disruptive and put some pressure on to create some of those turnover opportunities, well, then you need to look at the New York Football Giants and say, remember, that Cleveland Browns game is kind of where a lot of the action happened in terms of getting pressure on the opposing QBs, in terms of actually getting home and getting sacks. Yes, there's 15 of them on the season. Yes, Jason Pinnock and Dexter Lawrence lead the team with 3 apiece, and then it's spread out across a number of other players inside of this defensive side of the football. Like, that to me is a big part of what the New York Giants need to accomplish. They also need to find a way, as Darius Muasau is the only player with an interception on the Giants defense. So 4 games, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions at some point on Sunday. And this is true probably for almost all season long with the Giants, right? In terms of being able to win football games. At some point, the mistake will be there. The opportunity to create the turnover will be there. To give a short field to Daniel Jones in an offense that may not have Malik Nabers. If you miss it, if it bounces off the hands of Pinnock or of Newman or linebacker, whoever it may be, if you don't grab it, Deonte Banks, maybe he's having an absolutely brutal day trying to match up against Metcalf, but he turns around and grabs that pick because he gets his head around on a sideline pass that Geno Smith thinks he can thread the needle on. If you get it, then I think the Giants stay in the game. If you don't, then it might be that version where it goes from 10-7 or 10-3 to 17-3. And then you're just talking about chasing a game that the Giants are going to have a really hard time doing.
Oh, Adam, you
Yes.
said it best. When Darius
Thank you.
Muasau is your only person with an interception, when Jason Pinnock leads the team in sacks, you know that the statistics are stacked against you in terms of being able to stop such a potent offense. They're a top 10 offense for a reason, Adam.
And by the way, only in terms of pass deflections as well, Brian Burns has 3 on this team. Now, that's good because he's being active around the line of scrimmage. Cordell Flott, Deontay Banks have 2 apiece. And then that's when you finally get into the secondary. This team is not getting their hands on these passes when they're releasing. It's why QBs have had success. It's why offenses, by and large, have been able to have a lot of success and go with a high percentage when it comes to their completions week over week against Big Blue. Prediction time, Andy. Tell me about it. Where's the line stand? We head into Sunday. The Giants are 1-3. If you want to continue to have optimism for this season, we had talked about the next 4 games for them, and it's certainly a mix of teams that maybe aren't as good as we thought they were, et cetera, et cetera. Where does the line stand? Where do you stand? And is Big Blue getting a big West Coast victory?
The Giants are 6.5-point underdogs.
Gotta love that number.
Game total of 43.5. So if you do the math, they are not expecting the Giants to score 20 points in this game again. This is obviously a very tough matchup, very tough situation for the Giants. You were hoping, Adam, that the Thursday night football game leading into this would give you enough time to get everyone healthy, to game plan a little bit more. You felt like that was an advantage to the Giants, especially knowing that Seattle played on Monday night. So they're on a short week. The Giants are on a longer week. So, when you looked at this on the schedule, you're like, well, if you squint long enough, like the schedule really does favor the Giants in this one, at least in terms of preparation and injuries and all that stuff. But here we stand. The Giants look like they're a little bit more dinged up. We're still question marks on the offense and defense on who's going to play. What would you like? Would you like me to give my prediction first? Do you have something that you have locked in yet?
I mean, listen, I just go back and I look. The Seattle Seahawks have put up 26, 23, 24, and 29 in the loss on Monday night to the Detroit Lions. They score a lot of points. The offense is incredibly talented. I think it allows them in these games when you look back. Like they played in tight ones. I mean, listen, it was 23-20 against the New England Patriots, right? It was 26-20 against the Denver Broncos in the season opener. The big one was obviously the big victory came against the Dolphins. There is this world, we talked about this, where the 3-0 at the time Seattle Seahawks were a little bit more propped up on schedule and who they played, right? You can look back by the end of the season, we're not going to be talking about the Patriots and the Broncos as being world beaters. And the Dolphins are dealing obviously with losing Tua. So that changes the entire dynamic of who they are. That makes it very interesting. It certainly makes it a different type of conversation taking on a 3-1 team. It comes back to injuries and health for the Giants. If there's no Malik Nabers, even if this team was healthy, let's put it in that context, right? How would we feel about this game? I think it comes down to the ability for the Giants to convert in the red zone. You look back at the start of their season, the first 4 games, they've been there. Even without the kicker, they tried to go for it when they played Washington, right? The opportunities have been there. They took a knee, basically, in that game that they got to win against Cleveland. So you can go back and look at the schedule and say they could have scored in the 20s 2 more times at the start of the season, regardless of wins or losses. They could have scored in the 20s. Are they capable of doing that against the Seattle secondary, against the Seattle defensive front? I have bad teams that have put up 20 points against them early in this season. And then I have a good team in the Lions who absolutely shredded them. My confidence in Daniel Jones is at an all-time low, I think, in terms of being the reason you win football games. But I would say, at least at a minimum, short of my official prediction, that I would consider taking the points in this game. Taking the Giants in the 6.5, I actually think can work out for them, just because it's not like Seattle is absolutely blowing teams out in those wins. And again, their schedule has been against bad teams, albeit when you look at a team like especially Denver week 1, that's a good defense. And that's a little something different here in terms of how much we can expect the Giants to be able to slow down Seattle and hold them under 24 points.
Yeah, you talked about Bo Nix, Jacoby Brissett, Skylar Thompson. Those are the quarterbacks so far that the Seahawks.
Is Daniel Jones a better quarterback than those 3 quarterbacks? He's not Jared Goff. We all know that. 18 of 18, perfect. By the way, and notable that Jared Goff threw 18 times and did not miss a completion. So he took everything that was there for him against this Seattle team. That is notable. Like Daniel Jones can maybe do that, be efficient in his passing, but can he be better than effectively rookies and scrubs?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. And what I do believe, I said the offensive line is the key to this, but there's two people that you look squarely at. One
Yes.
is Shane Bowen. He has to figure out with the players that he has out there, how does he limit the damage to give the offense an opportunity? If this game gets into a shootout, the Giants cannot match the firepower that Seattle has. So they have to be able to mitigate that. The other piece of it is the Giants win this game potentially with a heroic effort from Daniel Jones. He would need to put together a game like he did against the Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs in
Oh,
order to
no.
be able to win this
Andrew,
game.
stop
I don't
referencing
think
him.
Daniel Jones, I don't think you can walk away from this game saying, Daniel Jones played okay, but I'm glad the Giants got the win. Like, I don't believe those two sentences can go together. The only way
Yeah.
that this happens is Shane Bowen decides that he is like, we are going to bend, not break. We're going to hold them to field goals. Daniel Jones plays the best game of the season, clearly one of the better games of his career, and the Giants sneak away a victory in a low-scoring game because if Seattle can put up points, this game can get ugly very, very fast for the Giants.
And the Giants also, Geno Smith been sacked 11 times through these 4 games, so almost 3 times per game. So you mentioned Shane Bowen, the bend don't break, but also maybe get some pressure. We talked about those turnovers as well. So, how can we look at this and say the Giants can have a path? Honestly, if you're saying one of the two, which is really hard to say about the Giants defensively because of the difficulty they have, although they have the pieces up front, not listed on the injury report. We mentioned Brian Burns, but limited. So we expect that this unit up front is going to be as healthy as it's been all year and capable of bringing that pressure. I would say if I'm going to hang my hat on one or the other, then I'm going to say the New York Football Giants defense needs to win the day, right? Because to your point, I'll be able to look back at the end of the game and say, I thought Daniel Jones, he threw the ball pretty well, 180 yards, no turnovers, looked pretty efficient. And again, health of the weapons obviously being a big factor. But it's harder for me to think that he throws for 260 and 3 touchdowns and leads the Giants to victory than it maybe is for the bend but don't break defense to pop off and get one key turnover in this, flip field position, and hopefully at that point, I'll tell you another factor here. Last point for me, Brian Daboll, if you get that, if it happens, if Shane Bowen has that defensive unit show up for you, you better be as aggressive as we've ever seen you in your Giants head coaching career. You cannot turn around off of a turnover at the Seattle Seahawks 35 and not be going for it. That is 11 down territory. It's every single time that you get to 4th down, you go for it, you go for it, you go for it. You have to find a way to reward something like that with a touchdown and then say, okay, now we're in this thing. Now we're up 7-3, whatever the case may be. Now have Shane Bowen, who has seemed to be flexible in the way that he's approached game to game and the systems that he's run and bringing pressure when it makes sense. Let him try to orchestrate a successful defensive scheme. Honestly, whatever we thought about Wink Martindale, he did a lot of this a year ago. He found a way to keep defenses in the game. Now, they absolutely fell apart on the back end, and that frustrated us, and that's why he got fired. But maybe there's a path for that now that you have a different front for this defense that can maintain pressure throughout the game, albeit having not seen it as much as we wanted to early in the season.
Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence have to be as great as advertised. You mentioned Geno Smith does take quite a few sacks because he is courageous in the pocket. He stands in there to make the throws to his wide receivers. Listen, the Giants have to get home and they have to create a big play on defense. I think you're absolutely right. Early on in the game or, at a key pivotal moment, if Brian Burns can get that strip sack that we know that he's capable of doing, change the dynamic of the game, all of a sudden put Seattle as one-dimensional throwing the ball, the Giants will have a chance if that can happen. So, Adam, prediction time. Are you going for the gusto here? Are you putting all the chips in the center of the table here?
I went for the gusto against the Dallas Cowboys, and
You
that,
did.
blew up in my face. Now, again, I can go back and say there was every opportunity for them to reward my gusto and win that game. Like, it's not like they came out and got blown out 40-0.
Pat
Like,
on your back. Give yourself
yeah,
a pat on the back because you had the right pick. The players just didn't perform, but
that's
your pick could have been right. You know what I mean?
classic Giants. I picked it right. They just didn't hold up
They
their
just
end of
didn't
the bargain.
execute. They just didn't execute to lead you to victory.
I'm wondering if the Giants will go out and sign Colt McCoy. He had some success out in Seattle for the Giants. So, it really, if they had Colt McCoy instead of Daniel Jones, I might be more bullish on this. Listen, I do believe it's possible to take the 6.5 here and have the Giants cover that. I could see a very easy, 23-17 type of game where the Giants do get maybe even a garbage time touchdown, right? Like that's kind of the game script you can write if you believe that the Giants are shot here and they are down by multiple touchdowns and it ends up being window dressing. There's that version of it. The upside of it is what we talk about. An early turnover changes the tide, and Brian Daboll, who's done a very nice job orchestrating this offense, maybe it ends up coming down to having to use Jalen Hyatt for the first time this season, it would feel like, trying to take some of those deep shots. We heard Daniel Jones say, and I did not love this, well, I underthrew a few early in the season, so now I overthrew some early in the season, so now I started underthrowing them. I'm like, listen, guy, this 7 to 10 yard window that you're just trying to dial in as you enter week 5 here is really concerning in the 6th year of your NFL career. So there's not a lot of confidence, but I just want the team to win. I want it to be surprising. And we talked a lot about what could have happened over the first 4 games. Let's have them go on the road. Let's have them surprise Seattle. I'm so confident in this. And I don't know. Let's have them win 23-20. Who cares?
Wow. Look at you. You did put your chips out in
softly.
At least
I very softly. I whispered it to the side.
Adam, I respect you
Thank
wanting
you.
them to be competitive, and I respect your position on this one.
Mm-hmm.
This is just a bad situation for the Giants. I feel
bad.
like, we've watched Daniel Jones play okay enough for the Giants to be like, oh, we're in games, we're going to win. It feels like this might be the game that shines a light.
I know
on
this is very much wheels fall off territory, isn't it?
This is
doesn't
this
this feel like it?
This could be one of those games where the game gets out of hand early. The Giants are chasing. Daniel Jones is just left hanging out to dry and trying to be ultra aggressive, taking hits. I don't feel like this is a good matchup for the Giants. Remember, Seattle's top 10 in offense, top 10 in defense. They have great home field advantage. Their quarterback is number 1 in passing yards. He's playing at a Pro Bowl level. The Giants are going to potentially be without their number 1 wide receiver. They don't have a run game to speak of. Is there anything else? They're out 2 cornerbacks. There is nothing in this that makes me feel confident, literally, at all. And so, for me, I think this could get ugly.
2017 Giants win. But I got to bring it down though. 23 was way too much.
I've got the final score 30-13 Seattle. I feel like
that's right.
Their offense is so potent. The Giants may be able to get one across the goal line at one point, score a touchdown, but it feels like most drives will stall out around the 30-yard line. 30-13 feels about right for me, Adam. It feels like, in the third quarter, this could be a 3-score game and everyone's just looking to get back home. But we are hoping that is not the case and the Giants can do something spectacular.
If the Giants end up pulling this one out, I'll clean it up in post and make it sound like I had a lot more confidence. Listen, guys, you go in optimistic. You hope for the best. We understand where this season is. We understand the setup here. It's a big matchup. It should be an interesting game to watch. Let's see how things look from a Brian Daboll perspective. What does Shane Bowen do? There's still things to learn about this team, even if they're going to be 1-3 right now and potentially 1-4 after Sunday. You know that you can catch us over on YouTube. You know you can get us over on social at AMAC214, at Adam Armbrecht, at One Giant Podcast. Support the podcast if you can on that feed, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your needs fulfilled. Until next time, until the best times, regardless of wins or lost times, as Andrew Mackowitz would want, need, and demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.